Thanks, Jess, for hosting this, for Kunik hosting this, and for allowing me the opportunity to help moderate this discussion. We're all, I'm moving a window here real quick. We're all dads, and we've all had a tough year to varying degrees with the whole COVID thing and the last 18 months and having families and trying to navigate a new world that way. And so this is really an opportunity to share experiences and lessons learned and other things, ask questions of other dads that have been in that situation. So with that in mind, while there's 4 or 5 of us that are, officially the panel, really the panel is all of us. So feel free to ask questions verbally. If you feel like you can't get it in there, you want anonymous, text any questions or comments to Jess, and she'll help moderate that and bring that into the discussion. If you find this valuable, let your Kunik representative know or send an email to Jess, and maybe they'll put together another one of these and we can take the discussion further. So that's an option. Before we introduce the panel, let's get started by taking a minute or two and just write down, put in writing what your expectations of this meeting are, what you'd like to learn, a question or something that you might have. And if we just take a minute or two to do that, that'll get our minds sort of centered on that with some things to focus on, and that'll help the entire discussion move forward. So we'll give you a few seconds to do that, and then we'll introduce the panel.
If you'd like to put it in the chat, I'm sure others would feel, very similar to what you're hoping to get out of it. So feel free to share if you want.
Okay. So what we'll do on the intro, keep writing if you need to. For the introductions, what we want to do is for any of us speaking, whether you're an official panel member or participating in other ways, give us your name, just a very quick what you do maybe, and then where you're coming from with the kids, and then the question or the comment or the insight that you want to share. So Jess already put me on the thing there, but I ran a private high school for 14 years on the West Coast. So I got to see 3,000 kids go through that experience with parents, getting ready for college. That was 2004 through 2018, so pretty recent. And I've got 3 daughters. Again, my name is Pete Bowen. I've got 3 daughters, one aged almost 31, one who's 26, and one who's 23. So the high school I ran was an all boys high school. So I got 3,000 sons, as my wife would say, and 3 daughters. And so I've seen a lot of things from that perspective, and that's where you'll see me coming from, or hear me at least. And let's go around the panel. Dedan, do you want to tell us who you are and a little bit of background? Introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Thanks, Pete. My name is Dedan Bruner. I am an attorney and mediator. I live in Washington, D.C. I am a single co-parent, and I have a 10-year-old daughter, Ella. So most of my perspectives will be from my adventures and misadventures with her and navigating the co-parenting space. So glad to be here.
And we'll keep going around. Eric?
Sure. I am Eric Larsen. I work in insurance for Walker & Dunlop, living just outside of the Washington, D.C. area. I live in Rockville, Maryland. I have a 3-year-old daughter that my wife and I have both been working from home, taking care of for the entire pandemic since March 13th, 2020, but who's counting?
Claudio.
Yes, my name is Claudio Ternieden. I am a recovering lawyer. I do government affairs for a large water sector association called the Water Environment Federation. I run all the government affairs, regulatory and legislative here in Washington, D.C. I live in McLean. That's important because we have a very small backyard, and that's going to come into the story. And I am the proud father of a 6.5-year-old going on 18. My wife and I have a wonderful time being with him and growing with him. It's been, from a certain perspective, the pandemic has been incredible because we both traveled a lot, and I got completely grounded after being out of the country for almost 3 months straight. So it was almost in a way a crazy blessing. To the point that when he had to go to school, we are not seeing him all day anymore. So it was we're lucky. He got to go to school all day, every day in person since September. So we sort of have a different perspective from that as well. But that's who I am, and hopefully can share some of those experiences with you all.
And then most of us have seen Cam hide in the corner of our screens during Kunik sessions, but now we're going to find out what he does when he's off the screen. Cam?
Yeah, so I'm Cam Smith. I'm the head of community at Kunik, and hopefully know a lot of you all. And if not, then hopefully I'll get to know you more after the call. I live in suburban Boston. I am a father of 3, a 7-year-old and 5-year-old girl, and a 2-year-old half boy, half tornado. The pandemic has been, interestingly, I think similar to Claudio's experience, has been kind of, a blessing and a curse that way. But a lot of it being a blessing in the sense that we've been around our children so much that it's changed that kind of interpersonal dynamic, I think, compared to what we had before. So I'm really interested to see how that compares and contrasts with some of the other dads that are here today.
Well, good. That's our panel. Jess, do we have questions or any insights already coming in? Or I've got a question for the panel if we don't.
Nothing yet, so please start off with your question.
All right, gentlemen, why don't we give a comment a little bit on maybe the most unexpected thing you learned during the pandemic? Maybe some dad insight that an unexpected insight or something you'd share the next time the cicadas come around, and we hope there's not another pandemic, but just in case it did, what insight would you share? Or what obstacle or other things did you overcome? So anything you can comment about the pandemic, we'll get started on the conversation. Dedan, or I'm saying it wrong. Dedan, why don't you start?
Sure, I'll jump in. It's Dedan, but as long as you start with a D, I'll give you credit.
I'm slow. I'm a Marine, I'm working on it.
No worries. So at the end of every school year, we do just a quick video interview with my daughter. Just how was the year? What'd you think? And so, she talked, and I asked her what her biggest challenge of the past school year was. And she didn't hesitate, and she said math. And it surprised me because, I thought it would be wearing a mask when she was able to go back to school, not being able to hug her friends, all of the things that I assumed that she was suffering through. And it was math, and when I asked about the pandemic, she said it was a challenge, but, it's fine. And I think we tend to underestimate, or at least I do, underestimate how resilient my daughter really is. And I think we transfer some of the challenges that we're having managing the situation to the challenges that the kids are having. But that's a reminder for me to kind of go to her and ask her what's going on with her a little more often, because I'm often surprised with how she responds.
Very cool. Eric, what's your take?
Well, the biggest insight, I guess, is that it's sort of, you don't really realize how much other people help you, even when they're not really actually directly helping you. Because my daughter's young, so she's still a toddler, and all of the joy that comes with that. But I'd say we didn't really realize how much, like, having a neighbor come over and watch her for a second, or a neighbor kid come play and entertain my daughter, like how important all of that interaction was. Because once things started opening back up and we were able to start doing that again, it was like an explosion happened with my daughter, that she suddenly was able to talk more and to do more and learn more, that we thought she was doing fine with us, but once she got out into actual socializing with other people, it made a pretty big difference. So I guess the social aspect impacts not just us as dads, but kids too.
Claudio, what about you?
Well, it's a number of different things, but I'm gonna, Dedan, your comment about resiliency is right on. I would start by saying, and what Eric said is so true. I mean, we cannot express enough how resilient they are, and also how important people that are close to you and you create your pod, and sometimes it's a neighbor, sometimes a best friend, you're able to have that exchange, and how important it was for them, but also for you, you know, and for your parents, because the parents' mental health is also very important, because the transparency thing that Dedan was talking about, it's also something you have to watch, you know. So their resiliency was a very much something that made me feel better, because I know that going forward, that resilience is going to increase, and that we need to nurture that, because it's going to be very helpful. And so one of the things that was a aha moment for us, aside from the things that we already heard, was that how if you act like everything is an adventure and going a back path somewhere, which is simple thing, that in of itself is a huge thing for them. You know, it's funny how it's part of their resiliency, but it's beyond that. It's like, you know, it's you making sure that you are not transferring, but also at the same time that you are making it exciting, and they'll be excited. And then how much they get out of it. You know, I walk in a path in the back yielded a whole afternoon of activities that I never expected. And that was an aha moment for me, because I kept using that same, I used that same approach, the same method with other things. And every single time it worked. So, okay, not every single time, I'm exaggerating, but mostly it worked. And it was a way to connect. So in the end of all this, we are more connected than we've been in a long time.
Very great. That's very cool, Claudio. How about you, Cam? Volume.
Muting every time. You know, I think it's similar to a lot of things that other people have touched on, but for me, it was more, there's a fine line between resilience and adaptability. And you know, one of the wonderful things about children is how they're so fixated on routines, and we all are in life, but I mean, children particularly, and how that can really like keep them tracked, which is manipulatable, luckily for us, but also creates scenarios where you know, it's really not as hard as we think it is sometimes for them to find joy and happiness and acceptance in a new situation. So, you know, I think a lot about how our 7-year-old was fine the whole time and was really upset a little bit, you know, that she couldn't be in classes with her friends at the start of the year, but she got over it. And then she actually really loved the pod she was with and was almost upset when it stopped, because she was like, oh, well, that, you know, but I don't get to see those friends anymore. But our 5-year-old, who was in an in-person daycare, all pre-K all year, was there the whole time. And the first 2 days was upset about having to wear a mask the whole time, and the fact that they had to do things on their own and they had their own materials and everything like that. And you get to day 3 and she was more concerned about the routine going in and her being able to have like DJ control of the car stereo. And then that actually became what she was more concerned about for the rest of the year, was what music that we were listening to on the drive in, because she just wanted to make sure that dad was driving her in, and that she was comfortable with that, and that, you know, she would be the one who was deciding what everybody was listening to, so she would have power over her little brother and things like that. So, you know, all of these things that we make out to be these huge superstructures that are going to have an enormous impact over time, I think sometimes just become water under the bridge relative to the much more marginal things that they actually take away as an important part of their life, because it's a way for them to interact with you. And it's a way for them to have that experience with you, which is, I think, a lot of times what obviously they're really grasping for. So, you know, it's funny, like as much as we've all made it out to be a huge deal, and I don't want to minimize the learning loss or any of these other issues that we're clearly going to have to deal with going forward. But from an interpersonal standpoint, I haven't seen huge changes, particularly now that things have kind of started to reopen and they can engage with kids again and things like that. It's been nice to see so many of them, at least our kids and our kids' friends, kind of interact very similarly, I think, to the way they did last March. It's more the parents that are now having to reinvent, how do we, oh yeah, that's right. We have to make small talk while drinking a beer for the next hour, that kind of a thing, which is sometimes harder than the other thing.